Welcome everybody. Good afternoon to our really exciting Zoom. Everything's on Zoom these days. And so over the next, 45 minutes or whatever, however long, wordy I get. First of all, I apologize because there's a lot of dust in the air. I'm in San Antonio and it's been driving us all crazy. Some dust storm, they say we've had, but I'll probably cough and I'll drink water, but just have to bear with me. So we're going to talk about putting a business plan together, basically, for your agribusiness. First comment is we're going to look at this little farming enterprise, however small or big you have in mind, as a business. And so that's going to be our slant when it comes to putting all this information together. So what, wish I could get this. Aaron, do you see something at the top that says, see the waiting room?
I do, but
okay. Well, it just covered up part of the slide.
Yeah, if you slide over to where the waiting room is, there should be a little looks like a little minimize button, and it'll minimize that, I think.
All right. Okay. All right. So first of all, people have seem to have an aversion to sitting down and putting a plan together, and I can certainly understand that with all the many decades that I've had working with people with business plans. That's generally the first reaction because most people want to get into farming and ranching so they get out and do something, whether it's raise animals or raise crops or build greenhouses and you get into aquaculture, whatever your event is. People say, well, you know, what's the value of spending all this time to plan? Well, first of all, we want to determine the feasibility of whatever your ideas are, your operation. The earlier we can do that, hopefully will save you a lot of time, money, and other resources. So the whole idea behind putting a plan together is that you're developing a roadmap to success, hopefully. But it's going to be a place for you to collect as much information as you can, and we'll get into the various areas of that you're going to be pulling information together. Pull all this information together and make as many decisions, or at least some plans that will give you some direction as you go through this, whether it's startup, whether you're an existing operation. I've had a lot of people that have been in business for 20, 30 years and say, I wish I'd have put a business plan together when I started because it would have saved me a lot of time, effort, stress, and so on and so forth. So basically you're gonna collect as much information as you can, your thoughts and your visions, and you're gonna put that together so you can look at all the strengths. That's what you're gonna build on, and the weaknesses you're gonna try and overcome through contingency plans as you put all your information together. One of the main reasons why people put the plan together in a lot of cases is because they ultimately want to get some funding. But we have a lot of people that go through the business plan, the Battlegrounds program that really are trying to do this on their own. They're gonna use their own money from whatever sources that might be, and they're not even after funding or after government program. So that might be a secondary reason. And we like to say that the primary reason ought to be that this is going to be a tool that will help you in your management as you go forward. One day somebody shared this with me, and I can't even remember who or where what came from, but I thought this was a kind of a good picture of where a lot of you might be. You might see where you are on this process, but we get a lot of startups, a lot of people that are really enthusiastic about getting going, and sometimes the planning process is what gives you that rude awakening. Hopefully the planning process is going to be that thing that opens your eyes up, and not the process of going out there and spending a bunch of money and time and effort to start planting and growing things and finding out that, hey, wait a minute, we've made some real mistakes, and we get some people that, I think that being in the pit of despair might typify where some people are. But hopefully through this planning process, we can get you through this curve as quickly as possible and over here on the breakthroughs and where you're on your road to success. So keep in mind that I guess the bottom line of this introduction is that it's all about the planning and not so much about the plan. You're going to gain far more analytical, technical skills, a view for the possibilities that you have to bring your dream to reality. You're going to gain that through this planning process, and you know how good your plan is at the end is going to depend a lot on your access to information and how much time you're willing to invest in that. But hopefully at the end of the planning process, and for Battlegrounds, it's a 16-week process. The last couple of weeks you are kind of finalizing your plan, but we're going to go through the different sections of that plan as we use it. And but this is not the only end-all, do-all outline that you need to necessarily follow, but it's one that we find is pretty straightforward and is pretty helpful, because at the end of this, we hope that you're a better manager than you are when you started the process. Now, if you go online and you Google business planning, you'll find any number of outlines that people suggest that you can follow. And there are computer programs that you can buy, software that you can buy that have maybe a different outline. But what we're going to talk about today is just some of these basic elements that need to go into your plan. And then keep in mind that there is a free agriculture planning website, and you'll see it listed there at the bottom, AgPlan at universityofminnesota.edu. And we actually adapted their planning process. We've tried to use it online, and it's a little bit cumbersome. So we just use a lot simpler process of back and forth within the online curriculum in order to, and we have a template that we've developed and that we use, and that's what it's going to be kind of the overview for our discussion this afternoon. So we'll go through some of these different sections, and I'll just give you kind of an overview. That in the time allotted here, we could get into a discussion about and spend way more time on each one of these sections. But this today is kind of an introduction, and if you go into this ag plan, or if you go into some of in the battleground curriculum, you'll get a whole lot more resources and guidance in terms of what goes in these different sections. So there is a section called executive summary. And what's important about that? That's the part of the business plan that you really want to hit the nail on the head, because sometimes if you share your business plan with somebody, that may be the only section they read. It has to concisely, precisely bring the main information and aspects of your business plan into a oftentimes 1 page, 2 page, maybe 3 page summary. And so there's a description of the business. Now the sections that I have in blue here, if you look at the ag plan outline, they're not included specifically, but we add those in there because they're very important components. We want to make sure that you have an idea, your vision on what you want your company, in this case, a farming operation or an agribusiness operation. We have another webinar, and I think it's online. Aaron can correct me if I'm wrong, but it's on business ideas. And so, you know, you may want to get into a farming operation, but there's a lot of related companies that you could start that support agriculture, that make use of your talents and gifts and education background, some of your experience. But that being said, whatever your company, your agribusiness aspires to be, you need to have some kind of vision. That's your, I guess you could call it your dream. You know, what do you want to have 5 to 10 years from now if you go through this whole rigmarole process? Remember, small businesses have a very low chance of survival. And so it's going to take a lot of perspiration and persistence. And you need to really want to do this. You need to really care about doing this. And so if you can create that vision, that's what you're shooting for. That gives you that'll give you the motivation to keep going sometime. Your mission statement, well, that's what your company does. Your vision is kind of what we want to be, and your mission statement says, well, how are we going to get there? If you go into the battleground curriculum, there are several resources that explain a lot of how you were to draft a good mission statement and goal statements and all that sort of thing. So we won't go into it this afternoon, but it's very important that you be able to concisely say, maybe in one good sentence or maybe two, on what your company actually does. You need to develop some goals, some shorter term goals and then some longer term goals. And many of you might have heard the term, you should develop SMART goals. So they have certain characteristics, but this is what you expect to accomplish. And that kind of lays things out. One of the things you'll see later on in the business plan is that there's a place for a timetable. So you lay this out and you say, this is what I want to accomplish by a certain date. So it sort of helps hold you accountable. Not that you're always going to meet those, but it holds you accountable and gives you some expectations of when you're going to get to certain points in this whole process. It's important mostly because we're talking about family businesses, that you put some values in there. You have some values that support your vision. They're going to oftentimes shape the culture of your business. What is it that you value? I talked to a lady one time that was involved in business development in the Appalachian region. And I'll always remember this, that there was a small community up there that was trying to work towards entrepreneurship, small business development in their community. And tourism was one of their main areas that they had a competitive advantage in. But there were places in their town that they did not want people to go. They did not want tourists to go there. They called them their sacred spaces. And I sort of look at your values as that you have some sacred space. You have some things in your life that you're not willing to compromise. And oftentimes when we see people involved in businesses and making decisions, they see some opportunities that will do just that, compromise their values. And then they find themselves in places that they really don't want to be. So it's really kind of a esoteric thing to put into a business plan, but I think it's very valuable because you're talking about a family business, and your family is one of those sacred spaces that you don't want to have this business negatively impact on your family, your religion, those kinds of values that you hold dear to you. And there's a summary, and if necessary, a capital request. All that goes into an executive summary, so that if the person reads that, it's going to say, hey, I think this is a really good idea. It's based on some sound thought, and I'm going to read the rest of the business plan. And so let's proceed with that. Okay. Uh, so one of the first sections is a description, a more detailed description of your business that you want to do. And so we include these 4 or 5 areas. They're just an overview. But these 4 areas are very critical to set the base upon which you're going to build your business. Location is extremely important because that they call it location in the overview. What am I thinking of? In the outline, sorry. In the outline, they just specify location and facilities. But those are the resources upon which you're going to build your whole business. Those are the physical resources. This is one of the areas that makes agriculture unique from other types of businesses. If you were going to have a manufacturing business and you're going to manufacture some product, like let's just say a cell phone. If you were in the business of manufacturing cell phones, you would have a building and you would have people that you would buy parts and you put them together. Those are your resources, those parts and the people. Well, in your case, for an agriculture enterprise, you're talking about natural resources and maybe some improvements that are already on those natural resources. That's why we call it, differentiate between location and facility. Okay, so when you're talking about your location, you need to be very, very, very specific. It's not just I have 20 acres. I want to know what type of land it is. It's upland, low country. It's got streams in it. It's a it's a sandy soil. It's a clay soil. Some of you will already have some soil tests done. Maybe you'll get NRCS to come out there, excuse me, and give you an overview of the soils and maybe the potential for what you can use them for. But those are your resources. And so you're going to make decisions about operations, what products and are you going to produce based on what those natural resources lend themselves to. There's a phrase in agriculture that we always use is don't fight Mother Nature. Well, Mother Nature gave you those natural resources. And so don't try and grow something on there that the soil, for example, is not inclined to want to grow. For example, you want plants that require acidic soils and you've got basic soils. You got to do something to the soils to make them acidic, or else you need to decide to grow something else. All right, enough on that. So facilities, any improvements that are on there. Some of you will buy property that's already fenced. Maybe there's some outbuildings, some barns, some corrals, maybe even a house on there. If you go buy land that's already in use, then include some information about the business history, even though it wasn't your business. If you've already been in business, you've got a business history, but a lot of the people that we help are startup operations, and so there's no real history involved. If you have experience and you have a business history, that's going to go in the management section. But we're interested in, so what is the land previously used for, or what's on there when you bought it? Those kinds of things might be included in business history. Ownership structure, that's the legal structure of your business. Without going into a lot of detail, are you going to operate as a sole proprietor, a partnership, limited liability company, a subchapter S, or a C Corp, a full-blown corporation? Most of the people we deal with decide to either be a sole proprietorship or an LLC. The limited liability corporation for people that want to have a small farm and sell they sell food products off the farm. They maybe go to the farmers markets or direct to consumers and stuff. The LLC is attractive because it does give you some limited protection. The bottom line is, in this section, be precise, concise, to the point. We don't need a long history, but we need something that's very complete. And it's not us that needs it. You're the one that needs it, because you're going to make production decisions based on what goes in this section. Your operations plan has a lot more elements to it, but we're going to start with the products or services. Some of you will actually provide some services in your business as well, and we can talk about that a little bit too. But mostly, you're trying to decide what products that you want to produce. Now, you may start off with a list of a couple of pages long of things that you want to produce. And you may find that as you match those up, see, part of the planning process is matching up what you want to do with what your resources kind of dictate that you can do successfully. So the first comment I'll make is, and it's depicted by the little red circle on the side. If you're a small farmer, you do not want to be in the commodity business. And if you're in the commodity business, that means that you're producing something like corn, cotton, soybeans, even cattle or other livestock, from the standpoint that you're going to sell into a commodity market. If you're going to, for example, if you're going to raise corn, then you're competing against the big time farmer that have thousands and thousands of acres. And that corn as a commodity has a very, very small margin. So with your 20, 30 acres, you're not going to end up realizing the type of income that you probably would like to have come out of your operation. Now, let's use cattle as an example of a livestock enterprise. If you have some cows and you raise calves and you take those calves to the sale barn, where you're a price taker, because that's an auction system where somebody else is bidding on those, you have no control over the price that you receive. You're producing a commodity. Now, if you want to raise beef cattle and sell those cattle direct to consumer in some form or fashion, now we're talking about a different type of a marketing system, even though it's a similar product. So the marketing system, which we'll get up to in just a minute, may dictate whether you're in the commodity, but you do not want to get in the commodity business, because typically commodities have a very small margin and you have no control over the prices. So once you have some kind of an idea on what products that you might want to produce, the next question is, how are you going to produce them? Let's say you want to grow some kinds of vegetables. Well, you can grow them out in the field, or you can grow them in a greenhouse. You can build high tones. You can do aquaculture, aquaponics, hydroponics. So there's a lot of different production systems. Everything from this very extensive, where you just plow up the ground out there and grow them, to very intensive operation. So what your plan looks like is going to depend a lot on, and especially the financial section, is going to depend a lot on the production system that you decide that you want to use. Now, you may want to build in your plan and look at several different production systems so that you can determine which ones would be the most feasible, most profitable, fit your labor requirements or labor availability, and because they're going to have different labor requirements. So, so it's important to come up with some fairly detailed descriptions of what that production system looks like. There's a customer service component that goes in operations, and that can be some people can come up with some really complex customer service things, but basically, what happens if you get complaints? That may be the starting point, but come up with a few basic policies on how you're gonna work with your customers and how you're gonna build some customer service into the business so that you can prevent a lot of problems in the future. Inventory management and on small scales is not as critical, but it is important because you don't want to tie too much of your money up in inventory. And then how are you going to manage some of those? Remember, a lot of your inventory is going to be disposable type products. They're going to have life expectancies. They're you know, if you could put a lot of feed and store it in a wrong situation, then it mildews, then that's a waste. So, you know, you have to come up with some kind of a little strategy on inventory management. Some of you are going to need licenses, permits, and regulations. Depends on what you do, but you need to look into that, because if you're selling food products, you know, the different commodities that you end up selling will have different permits and regulations associated with them. Not many of you will have patents and trademarks. You might want to trademark or copyright the name of your business and register that. But there are some people that have come up with inventions, so to speak, or things that on their farm that they've developed and that they may want to patent. Risk, there's always a lot of risk associated with agriculture. And so you need to have some kind of a risk management strategy, just some things that look at the different ways that you face risk. I mean, there are some uncertainties like weather. You can't do anything about weather, but you can plan for droughts, you can plan for floods, you can plan for some things and come up with some risk management strategies. Some of the commodity enterprises that you're involved with or commodities you produce you can cover with insurance, and that's a form of risk management. Think about environmental issues. If you're going to buy property, one of the first things you want to do is have an environmental study done, so you don't end up like some people that I've worked with that found out they had stuff on their property that they didn't know where it came from. They didn't know how to get rid of it, but they needed to somehow abate it before they could use their property. And then an implementation timeline. Put that together so you have a schedule on which you see the flow. So that the final analysis, it's gonna be important that you comprehend and understand how a lot of different enterprises that you decide to do, and each activity on your farm is going to be an enterprise. How that all fits together. You're going to have to coordinate your labor, your equipment use, and all that sort of thing, and your cash flow into a whole farm plan that's feasible and that you can manage. Remember, one of the main reasons you're putting this plan together is so that if somebody reads it, they feel comfortable, especially if it's somebody that you're asking for some funding, that they feel comfortable that you can manage and implement this plan with some degree of success. All right, let's look at marketing, for example, for a few minutes. So marketing is one of those topics that just encompasses, and these are not all, this slide right here does not depict what needs to come entirely, what needs to go in your plan in this detailed of an outline. I show you this because these are topics that fall under marketing. And a lot of people don't have a full appreciation for the breadth of this whole topic of marketing until they start looking at a list like this. So, but in a lot of this is incorporated into the business plan sections that I'll show you in the next slide. The first term up there, and this kind of reminds me to emphasize to you that one of the things that you may learn along the way in putting this plan together is some new terminology, which is not surprising to some people. The value proposition is, what value are you bringing to the marketplace? You need to be able to specify in a very concise manner, one little sentence. What value are we bringing to the marketplace? Because people buy benefits. If they don't see the benefit that your product offers them over other similar products, then they're going to liable, and you're charging a little more, then they're going to buy based on price. So it's incumbent upon you as the business owner in doing your marketing function to take the features of your product. What are the features? Those are those characteristics that we can describe about your product. And this is what differentiates your product from a commodity. So commodities don't have a great number of features that you can describe that differentiate them from other similar products. So here's an example. You're producing lettuce in a greenhouse, and it's organic lettuce. Well, there's a feature that if you tell your clients this is organic lettuce, it's produced under these specific conditions in a greenhouse, you haven't sprayed it, you haven't done anything that would be similar to what they might buy in the supermarket, then those people with health concerns are going to see that as a benefit. So they're liable to be, they're going to have the perception that they can pay a little more because you've gone to this extra mile to produce something that's going to benefit them better. I hope that makes sense. But the reason we talk about features and benefits is because that carries over into your promotion and all of your marketing efforts. That's what your marketing efforts are designed to do, is show people how the features of your product are going to benefit them, so they're interested in you. You get them interested in buying your product. Can you get it sold? Well, some people buy strictly on price, and some people buy because they see some value, and hopefully your value proposition. But the main question is not only can you get it sold, can I sell enough of it at the price that I have to charge in order to make money and justify my business? Okay. And people have to be able to afford it. Okay. I've got an item down there on effective demand. Effective demand means that people can afford to buy your product. If you have an exclusive product that's high dollar, that's going to limit your market some, right? You're not maybe going to be able to sell it into a neighborhood that has a lower economic threshold than, say, a higher end neighborhood. So your target market, you need to be able to describe who you are targeting your products towards. Demographics, income, ethnics, any kind of ways that you can describe that target market. And then psychographically, those are the thought processes that people have. Those are the people that are health conscious or they're, they have characteristics that millennials have, or those kinds of things. So you'll be able to describe that target market, because at the end of the day, you want to estimate how large your market is. What proportion of that market you think you can capture? Because at the end of the day, all this comes out in your financials. So the marketing function generates the revenue of your business. So operations is generally all of the cost of your business. It costs you a certain amount of money to produce something. And so when we get down to that pricing function, there's a lot of different models that you can follow as to how you just establish the prices. You have to be worried about competition, but you primarily have to make sure that the price covers the cost of production. So the cost that's generated by your operation is going to be offset by the revenue that you generate. And at the end of the day, you have some kind of a profit that you would like to generate, a certain return on your investment that you would like to have. So all this is coming together into an integrated package, if you would, this business. Okay. Let me make a comment about place. For some reason, a lot of small business people think that it's necessary to deliver everything. I'm not sure. I know where it comes from. It comes from trying to make it easy on your customers. But at the end of the day, you have to remember that when you put a delivery model together, there's a lot of time and expense involved. And oftentimes people find that they're not getting paid for their time and the delivery expense that would be offset by an alternative marketing system. Let me give you an example. A young fellow I worked with outside of Tyler. So he put a delivery, a CSA, Community Supported Agriculture, a subscription system together. And the first year he had 75 people sign up because he was driving the 15 miles delivering boxes of vegetables to his clientele in Tyler. He devoted literally a day a week, plus the gas and to deliver those. So I suggested to him, why don't you have the people come out to the farm? Even if they put together a co-op and one person comes out there and picks the products up and takes it back to town and gives it to their friends. I'd actually participated in a system like that previously, personally. So, it wasn't a really innovative idea. So he said, well, I'll lose all these customers because they want me to deliver this stuff. And I said, well, just try it 1 year. So he tried it the next year and said, you have to come to the farm and pick it up. He lost 25 customers. Well, but he told me that those 50 customers that stayed with him and he didn't have to deliver, he ended up making a whole lot more money than he did delivering to the people up in town. Point made. So our business planning template has these different sections that bring together a lot of those marketing topics that we just talked about on that previous slide. Sometimes marketing trend information is hard to get, but for a lot of different commodity areas, there's some trade association, you can talk to people at the farmers markets or just visit the farmers markets and talk to people that are around you. You're not really in that much competition with everybody if there's a large enough market out there for what it is you're producing. But there are other people that you can network with that are in the Battleground project, for example, that aren't in your area. So get some information from them. So most of these we've talked about in the discussion of the previous slide, but you'll see how they get together. The last item on here, I might say a word or two about. You need to figure out how you're going to develop a competitive advantage. Because if you are producing something you are producing something in most cases that is already being offered in the supermarkets. And so you need to figure out what your competitive advantage is so that you can get people out to buy yours and not just go to the supermarket and buy what's provided by the big box people. And and competitive advantage doesn't necessarily mean price. People seem to think that you have to compete price-wise, but if your production system is different, what are those benefits? It's all based on what benefits that you're producing by having an alternative production system and having some product, being able to describe that product and how it's different from what people could buy in the supermarket. Okay, we're getting towards the end here.
Greg, could
yes.
we just pause and ask a couple questions real fast?
Sure, go right ahead.
Awesome. So Dakota said that they're planning on raising corn and barley and rye for cooking and distilling into whiskey.
Okay.
Would we consider that raising crops for commodities?
No, it sounds like they're going to process them themselves, right?
That's what it sounds like. Is that what they would do? More like a value added?
Yeah. If they do the value added, especially, then that's not, you're raising a product that could go into a commodity market. But if you're going to do value added yourself, or you're going to sell it into a value added system, what they want to do though is probably have some contracts with people that, if they're not doing the processing themselves, develop some contracts with people so that they have it tied up. Otherwise, they're going to have to default into a commodity market. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. And so, yeah, and that's just from a personal standpoint, that is always our risk management strategy, is that we do set everything up, as much as we can with kind of future type contracts. Right. But if that falls through for whatever reason, you do have the default to commodity. Yeah. But obviously that doesn't.
I can remember back several years ago, there was a company came into the Panhandle and said, if you grow sunflowers, we'll buy all the sunflowers that you buy, because they had an oil factory, they could make sunflower oil out of them. Mm-hmm. So these farmers got all hyped up, and they produced thousands of acres of sunflowers. And the company came in there and said, "Well, we don't need that much," or or we don't. So, here were these farmers that had grown something, and what did they didn't have a market at all in that case. So you have to be a little bit careful. I think one of the first examples that I ever heard was when I moved to South Carolina. In North Carolina, somebody said, well, broccoli, if you grow broccoli, you can make a fortune out of growing broccoli. So everybody ran out and grew broccoli. There was more broccoli than the market would bear. And so the price went to nothing. So you have to be careful about the decisions you make, and do some background work on what markets are a little bit unique, maybe a niche market, or like you're talking about, growing the products that go into the brewery industry.
Yes, and just so you know, Dakota, as well, that there might be also some kind of secondary byproducts. I know quite a few folks are using spent grains for livestock. So then you also have that as well.
Exactly. We used to do that in the feedlot all the time.
Yes, yeah. So lots of folks have said, holler at my local microbrewers and use those for feeding. Let me ask, this one I'm just going to skip because it's kind of pertinent to the one we just asked, but how do I find out if my idea is viable?
That's what the business plan's for. You're going to once you get certain stages into the business planning process, and viable can mean a lot of different things. We usually use the term feasible because it can be economically feasible. It could be physically. We're looking for the infeasibilities that'll keep us from doing it and getting in trouble. But if it's feasible, then you can do it. You can grow it profitably. You can grow it, and which encompasses a lot of different things. You got to be able to grow it economically. You got to be able to grow it, period. And so most people start with a big long list, and what you're doing is you're looking at the characteristics that it takes to successfully grow each of those products, and then look at the resources you have and toss out the ones that don't fit in. Some of it's going to be seasonality. You can't have if you got a limited number of acres, you can't grow too many things within the same season. You want to try and spread stuff out and make it. You want your whole farm to be feasible or viable, if you want to use that term.
Absolutely. And I think there's also a lot to be said about doing things that you enjoy. I see a lot of people are like,
yeah.
I heard so-and-so can make a whole lot of money doing X, Y, Z, but they hate doing it. So we don't do well a lot of times at things that we don't like doing. So
yeah, you don't have the passion and to drive you when it's 100 degrees and 90% humidity. You got to go out in the field and do something. And,
yes.
If you don't like to sweat, stay out of agriculture.
Amen. All right, I'm gonna. Kay said she kind of understood after features and benefits, but I think it's a good example. Is says they don't feel like they could compete in a commodity market for cattle, like selling at auctions. They also don't feel like they can finance the processing of the beef. The direct marketing, i.e. farmers market CSAs, are extremely time consuming and distance population opportunity limited. So what other options might they have to make money on the farm?
So that's a bigger question. The processing, you pass the fees along to the customer. You don't pay the processing fees. You build it into the whole system. You have to price your beef and with the understanding that there are processing fees associated with it, and so you kind of look at that as included. So what's the final cost to the customer, and are they willing to pay that? If you're remote and it's hard to go directly to customer, sometimes you can partner with somebody else that's already doing the marketing, and you just produce a certain type of animal that fits into their market system. So it's sort of a cooperative arrangement. You're producing for somebody that's doing value add, so you capture some of that market in there, and you don't just sell to an auction market through an auction market. If you can keep your costs of, it depends on where they are. If you keep your cost of production down low enough, you can sell into the livestock auction and still make a little bit of money. But most people have limited acres. The places that can do that are those places that have large land holdings that have very low cost basis in them, and they're not so. The problem is those operations are not so profitable. They can cash flow because they don't have a lot of cash outlay to the land and the other resources that it takes for production. But if you look at the return on investment, it's still very, very, very low.
Yeah.
If you take into account the cost of the land, or at least the least opportunity cost of the land.
Well, I feel like the travel for distribution may be able to cover itself. So I think of folks like the Blue Apron buyers, and now there's lots of people or lots of kind of stores and stuff who are kind of like Blue Apron, but they're local. So they put together meals, or even restaurants where if you take your product and drop it off at one location, even if it's a little bit further, as long as you're getting rid of all your product at once, then that does get you some time back. But that is a good point about thinking about the time it does take you to do those things like farmers markets and CSAs, and just marketing in general. So I think that's a really good point, especially when Greg's going to talk about the financials here in a minute. But I also want to know, we are grass-fed beef producers, and a lot of times what we do is we sell our beef at a set dollar per pound. We take it to the processor, and then the customers pick it up from the processor, and they pay the processing costs when they pick it up. So that isn't a cost that we have to incur. And like But if you do have to incur those costs, remember that we talked some last time on our resources for veteran farmers and ranchers about some of those farm notes, farm loans, and some of the grant type stuff. But there's lots of options out there for helping you with those operating costs up front. So just keep those in mind. Let's see, Greg, another one is, do you know the gentleman in Tyler ended up making more money on 50 customers when they came and picked up the produce versus the delivery? And he said, how do you know how?
Well, there was a trade-off that he lost 25 customers, but he also gained all the time and the travel that he had to deliver. So it's sort of a, he saved more money than it cost him.
Okay.
It cost him. What's that? Oh, how did he do it?
Yes.
No, he just told his people this is the way we're going to do it this year. When you sign up again, this is the understanding that we're not delivering anymore. You're picking up out at the farm. See, you got to realize a lot of these people, they want to get out of town. They don't mind going to the farm. They get to see where their food is produced. They get out of town. They get to spend some, and if you have other things for them to do when they get there. I worked with a lot of people that have some kind of agritourism activities out there. Let them come out there and pick your own something or other, fruit, grow a little lavender and let them pick lavender, or grow some cut flowers and let them pick cut flowers when they come out and get their vegetables, and they'll buy something else. So it's however you put your revenue stream together. Remember, you want to figure out a system to capture, if people are coming out to your place, that you can capture as many dollars out of their pocketbook as you can when they're out there. Whether it's bringing their families out there for the day on the farm and sit around at a picnic table and eat lunch, or walk the trails, or look at birds, or whatever. You figure out what your little enterprises are going to be and how they all fit together. It's all a matter of how innovative you want to be, and to utilize the resources that you have as fully as you can.
Absolutely. Yeah. And just thinking about, a lot of those CSAs are weekly deliveries. So if you think about delivering to 75 people once a week, I can't imagine the time, effort, and energy that took, not just to deliver them, but get everything ready to deliver it.
Sure.
So,
Now, and some people will deliver to one or two places, and everybody's got to meet them there or something. That's a little bit different. That's maybe a little more efficient and not as time consuming. The problem is most people don't value their time. We've talked about this a jillion times, Erin. Most people don't value their time. If you weren't doing what you're going to do, if you just went to work at, what's your next best alternative? That's your opportunity cost. If my next best alternative was to go to work at McDonald's for minimum wage, okay, I need to be earning at least whatever it is, $7.50. Now minimum wage is some places $15. I need to be earning $15 an hour for my time when I'm working on the farm, when I'm delivering stuff, when I'm on the phone, when I'm doing my management, when I'm doing my accounting. I need to be earning $15 an hour. Or I'm, or I better like what I'm doing well enough to get paid $5 an hour for doing it, because that may be all that you're taking out of it.
Yes, that's right. And there's lots of ways to look at that, and the costs and how all that works together. But you'll really discover that in your financial plan. But to Greg's point, don't ever forget to add your time.
Yeah.
So, and last one, somebody asked about the template for the planning. Again, we modified the original ag plan through it's MSU, I think. And so if you're interested in the original ag plan, I'll go ahead and put the template, the link for the template in the chat box so you guys can access it from there.
Yeah, it was on that for early slide, but it's
yes. Yeah, and I'll put it there so you
that.
guys can click on it. But we did. We used that and we modified it. That's part of kind of the, I would say, the like skeleton for the curriculum in the Battlegrounds business planning course. And the difference is, and we've made some updates and added curriculum, those kinds of things for our business planning course. But in BG, I think one of the greatest benefits is getting Greg, who reviews your business plans weekly and gives you feedback and helps you answer questions and those kinds of things. So just wanted to note on that. I'll post it there, and then I think that's all the question for now, okay. Greg.
All right, well, we'll finish up then. So this is the management and organization section. The main part of this section, the main emphasis is on this management team. So whoever, and it's not so much about telling the reader what you're going to do, but it's who are the managers and why, from an education and experience standpoint, why are they qualified to successfully implement this plan? So let's say you've been in the military, you really don't have a lot of ag experience, but you are in a leadership position. And so you've got all this management and leadership and all those things that you picked up from your military experience, but you don't have a lot of experience in the agriculture field. So you need to explain, this is how I'm going to get that. We had some people that have both. They come to the table with having been in the military and had this management type experience, but all along the way, they had these little side businesses that had to do with agriculture. So then and you probably won't have a board of directors. You might have some advisory people. That's all fine and good. The personnel plan, that's where you're going to match up the necessary tasks with who's going to do them. Well, if it's just the management team is going to do all the work on the farm, then just kind of sketch out, Mr. Manager is going to do the operation stuff, and Mrs. Manager is going to do the finance and the marketing, or so on and so forth. You don't have to get real detailed. You need to know. The thing is, you don't want things to fall through the cracks. You don't want the activities that need to be done on the farm, or in case of maybe marketing or finance, off the farm, but part of the farm. You don't want anything to get neglected. Somebody needs to be in charge of all that. And then professional services, it's always good to know that, okay, if I've got livestock, that I'm raising livestock, I've got a vet out here, I've got maybe a nutritionist, I got a supply of inputs and so on and so forth. So that's what that section is all about. There's a lot, just like in marketing, here's a list of all the topics associated with financial planning. You're going to have a list of the startup costs, and you're going to be making investments probably before you ever gain some outside resources. Before you even get started, you're going to be making some investments. Well, know how that fits into the whole scheme of the financial picture of your business. Okay, there's really three main financial statements that are going to drive how you keep track of your business. Of course, you're going to have to prepare personal statements because you're getting into, mostly of you are going to be getting into a new business. And oftentimes for the first 2 or 3 years anyway, your personal finances are what's going to support that farm, or what's going to at least provide a foundation for that farm because you're not going to be making a profit right away. But the three main statements that you need to be that you need to complete at least annually, if not more often, is a balance sheet which shows your financial position, at your assets and liabilities and your net worth. And then a profit and loss or an income statement. That's over a period of time. That's what your operations, that provides a financial picture of your operations over a period of time. So I would suggest that even monthly, if you use a computerized financial management system like QuickBooks or some such thing, you can print do a profit and loss statement each month, and you can do a cash flow. Now, the first thing you need to understand, cash flow and profit and loss are not the same thing. Profit and loss statements include many items other than just the cash flow. The cash flow is what you're going to really have to monitor in order to keep your business afloat. Okay, that ensures that you have enough cash inflow that you can pay your bills. If you don't, then you're going to have to bring in cash from outside, which means from your personal side, probably you're going to have to pay some of your bills. But ultimately, that cash flow is going to determine maybe how much money you need to borrow to get you to a positive cash flow in your business. And that may be over the first year or 2 years, or hopefully not longer than that. And so I didn't mean to do that. There's a lot of other topics that have to do with finances, and you can do a little homework on those. I guess one of the main points I want to make associated with finances is there's a lot of people say, I'm going to run this thing with my money. I'm never going to borrow any money. I want it. Even if I have to wait to do something, I'm not borrowing money. In today's low interest rates, you can oftentimes borrow money, and it's a profitable decision for your business. In other words, and it may expedite the growth of your business much quicker and get you to the point of profitability and positive cash flow than what you would have done if you'd have just tried to use your own money. And here's the main point. If I can borrow money for 3% and I can put it in my business and it generates 6% return, I've made 3% on somebody else's money. So borrowing money is not a bad thing. It's a bad thing if it puts you into if it impacts your balance sheet and creates too many liabilities for the assets that you have. In other words, it puts you in what they call a highly leveraged position. You don't want to get too leveraged in your business, but it's okay to borrow, especially because oftentimes you don't need to borrow these big quantities of money. $5,000 or $6,000 may get you over a hump, and you can pay it back within 2 or 3 months. But it's just something for me to throw out there because I see it so many times when I'm reviewing the business plans of people. But I'll argue that point with you if you want. So here's the 6 areas within the business planning template that. Now keep in mind that we have a business planning template that all those other sections are in a Word document. But in the financials, we have a spreadsheet, and it's a fairly automated spreadsheet. So all you're going to have to do is put in your information, and it's going to do a lot of calculations for you. It'll print out the completed balance sheets and income statements and cash flows and stuff. So, and it's already developed. And if you're not comfortable with a spreadsheet, it's really not that complicated. We can help you. We can get through it. But you're interested in your financial position, any historical performance you have, or projected performance from an income statement or a profit and loss statement and a cash flow. And then on the Word document, there's actually a section for the asset management and benchmarks, and then justify any projected loans that you might include in spreadsheet in the capital request section. Okay, when you get your plan all done, if you're going to submit it to somebody, then you can put it into a nice notebook, get it all cleaned up and make it in color and all that sort of thing. But when we're doing it, when I'm reviewing them, I don't care about all those details. I care about the content, and you should primarily care about the content at this point when you're first getting into the whole process. But you can give it a professional look later on and put it in a nice notebook or something. So, Aaron, with that, we're a little bit over an hour. I don't know what you had allocated for this, but
I have an hour, but and so I've told folks like last time, if they need to go, they can. But we'll open it for questions real fast. Let me address just a couple that I know. So one person suggested the SBA and the SCORE centers for some additional resources, and that's great, Kim. Thank you for that.
Let me tell you. Well, let me make one comment about that.
Yes, please do.
So, because I've worked with the SBDC, the Small Business Development Center, more than I have the SBAs or the SCORE. But what I've always found is that these people, they know business and they'll help you with the business part of it. But most of the time, they're not familiar with agriculture. So if you start going in there and asking them agriculture questions, they're going to go, I don't know about that. I can help you with your finances, or I can help you with a marketing plan, but operations, you might have to go somewhere else. And you go to just somebody that's even remotely involved in agriculture. And
I attended an SBA event not too long ago, and they have some great resources and some great people on development. But one thing I noticed when they were talking about like getting started and startup funds and all those kinds of things, they were talking about like small business loans that were like 10 to 18%. And now this was a while ago. This was actually, I think it was in February of this year, but I was just thinking, oh my gosh, like that hurts my heart. So just remembering that in agriculture, you have lots better options for loans and those kinds of things, and grants that are available for you out there. So just make sure that if you do go to the SBA or SCORE, which again, some great people, some great advice, just keep that in mind that, to Greg's point, they're not all have agriculture backgrounds, and that's why we do this course, and why we work on that. So
the production credit systems and the ag I don't know all the names of them right off the top, but they're far more amenable to agriculture type loans. Let me make one comment about grants. There are a few, but sometimes people say, well, I'm just going to start my farm and I'm just going to get grants because I don't have to pay them back. There aren't a lot of grants that you're going to get. There are a lot of federal programs. Some of them are a cost share program, but there aren't very many straight out grants that there's some awards like the farmer veterans groups that will give you $5,000 towards operating costs or towards a tractor or things like that. There's some awards out there, but don't look to the federal government to give you too many grants because they're not in that business. And because I've got had a lot of experience at the SBA, and I've argued with them over the years, but see, they're interested when they say small business, that they're not really interested too much in agriculture, for one thing. And traditional banks aren't necessarily interested in agriculture unless you know of a rural bank that has some agriculture in their portfolio. But they're more inclined to lend for houses and cars and things like that. But so I remember one time in Longview, the SBA and the SBDC and I don't know who else, they had a business fair one day, And they came in there and they said, because SBA loans, you go through a local bank anyway. They came in there and they said, oh, we're anxious to get small business going and, lend you money and stuff. They had so many rules and regulations. And I went up to one of the bankers that was in there and I said, it's kind of hard for these people to get these loans. He goes, well, yeah, we really don't want to loan money to
Oh my
small.
gosh.
He said, we're not, this is for, it's basically he's saying it's for show. So look to your ag community to be a lot more supportive. But now you got to remember when you're going in with your hand out to anybody that's loaning money, they're taking on a risk. You're a risk to them. And so you better be able to show them that you're ready to be able to get into a truly operating loan so that they'll be able to get their money back. I keep telling the story of my friend back in the day that wanted to start a commercial catfish operation. Well, we had it all planned out. I mean, it was it was going to cash flow after 8 months and so on, but he didn't have the management experience. And so the banker, who was a friend of mine, he said, if you go work for a catfish farm for 6 months or a year and come back, he says, I probably can give you the money. But he had no good faith that this person could implement his plan successfully because he didn't have the management experience. So that management component that I talked about is really pretty important in terms of risk management if you're going to go out and try and participate in programs or get funding for somebody.
Yes, and that's a great point on grants. The grants are very competitive.
Oh yeah.
And you may take a lot of time putting in an application to get nothing. And there are some sad stories I find of people who don't want to finance it with their own money for whatever reason, and so they just keep applying for grants and they never get them, so they never get to start farming. Well, I would say if you get one, that's great, but if you hang all your eggs in that basket, then the possibility of you never getting started is actually kind of high. So, and one thing I think I just want to mention to you too, is when you're thinking about getting a loan or applying for a grant, or even some folks tell me like, oh, well, I don't have to worry about farm labor because I think people will just want to come out here and work and do labor for me. And my question always to them is, well, based on what your plan is, would you loan you money? And how much money? And how often do you go out and work on somebody else's place for free for them to make money? Most of the time, the answer to those questions are not what they were hoping to hear. So just wanted to put that out there to you. When you have a business plan like Local Honey, the B plan is very simple due to high demand and existing templates. Why do people still want to see B plans? You want to touch on that, Greg?
I'm not sure that the conclusions that you make there, Brandon, it's very high demand. What is high demand? It's how much can you sell at a given price, and how is that gonna fit in your overall financial picture? And there may be some existing templates out there, and I'm not sure what you mean by existing templates, but if you can find a business plan that fits your situation and you can adapt it, then more power to you. That'll save you some time. But when you say people, why do people still want to see business plans? Well, we kind of told you that if you're going to borrow money, they want to see a plan. If you want to, if you're applying for a government program, they want to see a plan. But if you're not going to do any of those, you just need a basic plan for yourself. It may not include as much detail as what we asked for in the battleground plans, but we're after the overall comprehensive plan. So I don't know whether that answers his question or not. Somebody up here, let's see. I'm looking at the chat. Somebody asked about software. Is there software we need to download for farming? Well, there are some record-keeping software programs out there that you can use. If you're just going to want to do and that's from the production side. I think a lot of times you can kind of develop your own record-keeping software just from a simple spreadsheet, if you're familiar with that. If you're going to think about the financial, whether you need a computer to keep your financial information, I don't think you can go wrong with something like QuickBooks. And you get it online, it costs you $5 a month or something like that. That I would definitely think about some kind of software for your financials, just because that's something that, remember what you need, if you're keeping information, you're transposing information so it becomes some kind of knowledge for you. So you're going to have financial transactions every month, and you want those to, then you use the software to generate your profit and loss, or even your balance sheets and stuff, which then becomes a push of a button. That's why you buy software, to make your job easier, to keep records, to transpose those records into something that it becomes knowledge that you can make decisions on.
Yeah, and I just, one that my CPA actually suggested is called Wave. It's WAVE, and it's an online one. It's not an app. And I don't know if I just have a great CPA. I mean, I think it's pretty good, but he set up my chart of accounts for me, and it's connected to my bank account. So when I make expenses with my farm bank card, then all of those expenses are put into that system, and they're categorized, and then he can just pull my information from there. And so, but it was free. Wave, it was free to me. So it's simple. I'm not a very techie person. I was using just honestly a paper and pen and a notebook, but the time the goat ate it while we were out working kind of steered me away from that. So now we use that one on Wave. So I don't recommend anything particularly, but I know a lot of folks use QuickBooks. It was just, I can't figure out how to set everything up in QuickBooks. So I just use something he already set up for me.
Yeah, that's a new one on me, but I think I might have seen a reference to it. But yeah, anything that automates your finances and facilitates you not having to get your calculator out. Can I briefly explain the example about borrowing 3% and returning 6%? Well, usually I think about it in terms of you wanting to do something new in your business. So let's say you want to buy a high tunnel, and it's gonna, and it's the money to borrow the money. It's going to cost you 3% interest. Well, if I can put the high tunnel out, and I'm going to get let's say 25% more production than I would have gotten if I didn't have the high tunnel. Which, when I look at the bottom line, that increased my revenue or my profits. Let's just say profits by 6%, then I've made money with somebody else's money. I've netted 3% return. Does that make sense?
Yes. So
hopefully.
you would pay the note back.
Yeah, you pay the note back.
3%.
Yeah. And then, but my return on using that money netted me 3% above what I paid for the money, because I generated more product in this case. Maybe it's, or whatever, it's more revenue based on more product or higher quality product. Maybe I got a better price, but ordinarily and if you'd have waited to use your own money, maybe it'd have been 2 years from now before you had enough savings to buy that high tunnel. Well, why not use somebody else's money?
Well, and then you could look at if you would have got that much more over that year, then you have those 2 years, then all that money that was lost for those 2 years.
He says he gets it now, and plus Brandon added, plus you have the equipment and can reinvest the profits. Well, yeah. So what? Yeah, because then you're gonna keep accumulating that 6% after you pay the note back. So yeah. Okay. So then you've grown your business with somebody else's money, and you've done it in a more timely fashion.
Yes, sir. And like I said, yeah. And so check out that one we did last time, the webinar. I know for those of you that were with us, and you can watch my old one, the resources for veteran farmers and ranchers, on our online courses, Texas Agribility. So if you missed the last one, that one is kind of similar. There's
one here.
Okay,
go ahead.
Let me just tell them about next week, and so if they need to jump off. On Thursday, we're going to do we're going to try it, a community of interest webinar, meaning that what we do at the workshop is we take you guys based on your area of production, and we break you into groups, and we ask some kind of questions and kind of work together to answer those questions, talk about, what might be involved in starting some new enterprises, those kinds of things. So we're going to do that on Thursday. So when you guys registered, you chose the particular enterprise. So we're going to try and do the breakout session kind of groups, and we'll have some facilitators. It would be really helpful for you if you watch Greg's Rural Business Ideas webinar that we did earlier in the year. I think it was maybe Kim, somebody posted it for you. It's on our YouTube channel. I'm going to post the link here again in just a second. So make sure you watch that. We'll send it with the pre-post survey, the link to it again, but make sure you watch that, and it'll be helpful for you for Thursday. So that's all we have, particularly today. We're going to stay on and answer any other questions you have. But
I just got one more question that I see here that's probably a good one, and then I'll let them go. Are you getting off, Aaron?
No.
Okay.
I'll stay on as long as
I thought you said you had. I thought you said you had to go.
I was telling them if they need to go, they can.
Yeah. Okay. So here's the last one that I see that maybe I should address. If Aaron says, if you have a plan already, can someone look over it to see if it's a good plan? Well, I have a whole host of plans that range from not very good to way detailed and very good. So the thing, and people have asked me and I thought about scrubbing one or two and putting them up. You can go online. And in fact, I think there's some example plans in that ag plan website. The reason I hesitate to share is because people have a tendency to take a plan and just say, okay, I'm just going to make little changes in that, and that becomes my plan. And so what I want you to do, I want you to start from scratch, and you tell me what you need to put into your plan to make it meaningful for you, because then it's your plan. I've had lots of people offer me a lot of money to write a business plan for them. And I'm always tempted because I'm an economist and I love money. But I tell them, no, I will not do that. Because if I write the plan, then that's my plan. And I want it to be your plan. Because at the end of the day, you're the one that has to implement it. And you're responsible for what goes into that plan, and you have to understand what the implications are, so that when you do implement it, you can make quick changes in it. You can maybe modify it. Your plan is never set. Once you draft your plan, it's not ever set. You can modify it over time. and make changes as you learn more, as you gain more information. But as you learn more about your operation, you can tweak that plan, and then it becomes more valuable for you every year. So with that,
Well, and
I will
Greg, I want to
defer to
thank you.
Aaron.
Yeah, thank you for all that you do and all your great knowledge. And we've got to build stories over the years, and has made really a big impact on what we do and how we farm and ranch and everything. Because I'm a, we started, and I came from a large commercial cow-calf background in West Texas, so everybody had lots of acreage and lots of equipment and those kind of things. And I thought about that's what we needed when we got started, and Greg really helped us see that you can farm and ranch with, there's a difference between your needs and your wants. Do I need it? And can I afford it? Versus just, do I want it? And that's really made a big impact on the things we've been able to do. And I feel like it really our enjoyment overall, because no matter how much you love your farm and ranch, if you're crazy upside down and swimming up, upstream, trying to get all your debts paid back all the time, it's really not that fun. And there's a lot of crisis, unfortunately, happening around the country because people got into those operations sometimes and they didn't have a good plan. So I know the plan is not usually as exciting as the actual production. I'm definitely, my husband and I are both the operations people. We like to do the stuff. We don't really particularly like to write it down. So, but it's important, and that's why in the Battleground program we make you start with a plan, and then kind of phase 3 is kind of executing that, trying it out, seeing if your theory works. And one thing you said, Greg, really reminded me about, if I used to, folks would email me or call me all the time asking for what resource could they use for XYZ. So my phone was always blowing up, my email was always blowing up, which created some stress for me because I didn't ever want to leave you guys hanging. And then somebody asked me once, they're like, well, what happens when they graduate the program and they don't have you on speed dial? Like, how do they find all that information? I was like, well, they look it up, just like I would look it up. And she's like, well, so doesn't that mean by not giving them exactly what they need when they call you and making them learn how to look it up and learn how to do it on their own, isn't that more beneficial for them overall? And it really is. So I encourage you, before just firing off those questions, even to the expert, is do some research. See if you can find some of that information so that you'll actually learn where it is next time you need it. Not that there's anything wrong with asking our specialists. We have ag economists in every district, but I just want to encourage you to build the skills of research and analysis instead of just leaning on others' information, because we all have some, and even we all have some bias on things, and so getting your knowledge base rounded out is really a good skill to have, I think. So with that, I will tell you guys, like I said, we will send you a link with the pre-post survey in it. We'll get those over to you once we get off the webinar. It'll probably come from Kelby. And I just wanted to, again, thanks, Greg, for joining us and for being with us for as long as you have, and really helping us develop this program and what it's become. And it's changed a lot of folks, and we're grateful for that. And if you guys need us, we'll stay on for just a little bit. And otherwise, I will see you on Thursday. Thanks, everybody. Oh, and I did post the link to the survey in the chat if you guys want to do it from there, but we will forward it to everybody here in just a little bit.
Very good. We will catch you all later. Thank you all for coming.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Greg. Thanks, everybody, for joining.
Bye. Thank you.
Bye.